police reform quickly. What do you think Congress needs to do? And, you know, where do you stand on this idea? I mean, I think this, again, frankly, is just bad rhetoric sometimes, defunding the police, reorganizing the police, Blue
Mhm.
Lives Matter, all of that stuff. People get into some kind of team and then they don't look at the nuances. But obviously, I don't know, maybe it's not obvious to you. It seems obvious to me that there's a racial injustice problem in this country that goes back to, the founding of it on the backs of enslaved human beings. I mean, that's unfortunately our history. That's something we have to grapple with. How do you get your mind around that problem going forward as someone in the Justice Department or a policymaker, if you're advising a member of Congress, et cetera?
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you, Kim. I think defunding is an unfortunate term because I think what we really need is funding other components of social welfare system that can supplement the police. I think that the challenge the police have in urban jurisdictions is we're expecting too much of them. The problems are just too immense to be solved by law enforcement. So if we could restrict the police to dealing with criminal justice issues, particularly with violent crime, and if we could have other social welfare agencies deal with psychological mental health issues, I think that would go a long way towards solving the problem. So I'm not in favor of defunding. In fact, I think one of the challenges that we face is that many urban police departments are not adequately funded, and particularly the police officers are not paid enough to attract the kind of people that we want to be police officers. So I think we ought to put more effort, more thought into whether we're putting the money in the right places. And I do think that there are departments. I was U.S. Attorney in Maryland and had to deal with the Baltimore Police Department. There are departments like Baltimore that need reform, and I think that Congress can help. We have federal models for how police officers ought to operate, and I think we can provide funding and encourage departments to reform themselves. It's not going to happen overnight, but we really do need to change the culture of some of these urban departments.
Well, I think in New York, there's a mandate from the state that certain departments reconfigure. And I know a friend who's the mayor of Ithaca, New York, my alma mater, Cornell, who is proposed establishing two arms of the police department. That is one that deals with violent crime and one that deals, the cat in the tree, a friendlier, less intimidating side of things. And I'm paraphrasing, but my reading of the reporting on this is he's getting pushback from the police as well as from other constituents that, need to defund completely. But then there's the other end of the spectrum saying, don't mess with my police force. What do you do with police officers or police departments that don't want to reform? And I agree with you. I mean, I have a tragic situation with a friend of mine whose son took his life with a gun recently, called the police first and said, I'm in an unsafe, I don't feel comfortable. I'm a threat to myself. The police came, didn't do anything left, and then this tragedy happened. That's the moment where you need a mental health professional, not a police officer, and the outcome was absolutely horrific. But what do you say to the police departments that push back on this idea that they're not one-stop shopping and reform is actually something we all need to get behind?
Kim, what I think we ought to do is try out different approaches in different places. We shouldn't try to impose a one-size-fits-all model, but when departments are receptive to this, I think there ought to be efforts to try to fund maybe, as you suggest, a shadow force that responds to situations that don't call for law enforcement. Because you can't train police officers to be social workers. I've worked with a lot of police officers over the years. 99% of them are decent, honorable people, but they're not trained to deal with those mental health circumstances. And not only that, but they face the pressure to resolve a call and to get on to the next call because they're busy, all throughout their shift. So I think that there's something to be said for having a separate component that deals with issues that can be resolved short of law enforcement, recognizing that more law enforcement is not the solution to every problem.